Hello everybody and welcome back. If you remember back in January, I think it was the 22nd of January, it was announced that George Harrison's Dark Horse label was going to be entering a global partnership with BMG, and they were going to be releasing some reissues of previous Dark Horse releases, and there's also the possibility of some new material coming from the Dark Horse label as well. And the first thing we saw from that was there was a tribute to Tom Petty that was released. It was done by Jacob Dylan, Danny Harrison, and it featured Willie Nelson and his sons on the record. It was called For Real, For Tom. You can check out that video on YouTube if you haven't seen that. But when I heard the news of Dark Horse and BMG collaborating and entering this partnership, I had my suspicions that something good was going to be happening with this. And today I read the news and oh boy, I got excited. This article comes from Rolling Stone magazine. I will post a link in the description below for you to read the full article. The article kind of goes into the history of Dark Horse and how everything kind of went for George in that venture after Apple broke up. And the last little bit of the article that's printed is the most interesting part to me. And I got a copy here that I'm going to read to you in case you don't care to go read the article yourself. This is what it says. After going through the history of Dark Horse and everything, we get to the company's archival research has turned up a trove of unissued George Harrison material. Now, Danny Harrison is quoted as saying, "We have people digging through mountains of tapes, and they keep coming. Boxes and boxes of them." End quote. This year marks the 50th anniversary of All Things Must Pass, which most of you probably already know. And Danny and his archivists have unearthed hours of unreleased material and unheard songs from those sessions. Olivia says, "A lot of it has been bootlegged, but we have better versions. We have all the 24 tracks of All Things Must Pass, and we found lots of different takes and talking in the studio." End quote. Now this is the stuff that I'm really interested in, hearing all these different outtakes, some of the studio chatter and things like that. That'd be really cool to get a 50th anniversary edition of All Things Must Pass. The article goes on to say, next year will mark the 50th anniversary of the Concert for Bangladesh, followed in 2023 by the 5-decade mark of living in the material world. Each of those projects could be accorded expanded editions, although the specifics aren't worked out. Danny says he is asked on a regular basis about his father's controversial 1974 tour more than any of Harrison's other undertakings. Now I haven't really seen too much from the 1974 tour. There's a few clips here and there I've checked out on YouTube, and they've been not very good. At that point, his voice was pretty shot from different things. But it's still, there's a lot of people that are really interested in hearing those concerts, seeing some footage and things like that. It'd be really interesting to have a release. So it says here, Danny says he's listened back to tapes of all the shows and agrees that his father wasn't in the best voice, but still feels the shows revealed another aspect of George's music. He says, his voice is pretty tired, but in my opinion, it sounds great. It's raspy and it has a grit to it. You can hear the fragility in all the songs. It's a different take on a lot of his music. Now, Olivia says several of the shows were also filmed on stage and off stage, which is really interesting. And the material has the makings of a documentary. She says, "I think it would make a great tour movie. The backstage footage is amazing and hysterical. Things went on backstage that don't happen now. Now everything is so cut and dried, the opposite of spontaneous." End quote. So reading this last little bit of the article, it got me really excited. It seems like now that they've entered this partnership with BMG, that they're going to be moving forward with a lot more frequent releases. As in the past, it's been very, very sporadic with the things that have come out on the Dark Horse label and George's material. And anytime I hear of a George Harrison release, I get excited. I just want something new and unheard. And so let's just go back over the last, George has been gone for nearly 19 years now. Let's go back over the last 19 years and see what has actually come out in that long range of time. So in 2001, George Harrison did work on an All Things Must Pass album, kind of a box set here. This is a 2 CD set. It's got a few bonus tracks on here, some things that weren't released on the album. It's interesting, and he also does he does a remake, that's what I'm trying to say, a remake of My Sweet Lord, and in my opinion it's not that great of a song. The remake that he did, the original, is far superior to that, but it is interesting that he decided to go back and give it another shot, and we got to hear that. And there's a few extra bonus tracks that are really nice on here, but it's not a totally new working or anything like that. It's kind of digitally remastered. That's about all. A few bonus tracks here and there. But if we do get a 50th anniversary edition of this, according to the article, there's so much more that can be put on this album that would be really interesting to hear, and I'm sure the fans will really enjoy it and definitely pick it up. So then that was 2001, and the following year, George passed away. He had been working on an album, and then after his passing, Danny and Jeff Lynne from ELO, they decided to put out Brainwashed. This is the collection of songs that he was working on before he passed away. So they did put the final touches on this and did end up releasing this after George passed away, this is a really good album. I really enjoy this one, and I'm glad we got another proper album from George after he passed. So then a couple years go by, and then we end up getting this nice big box set here. This is George Harrison, The Dark Horse Years, 1976 to 1992. This is filled with all of George's Dark Horse albums. It's got the Live in Japan CD, and there's a bonus DVD that comes along with it with some music videos. It's just a really great set, and I'm really glad to have this in my collection because it compiles all his great Dark Horse Records albums. So then in 2005, another release is announced, and they're going to be coming out with the Concert for Bangladesh. Now this is the super deluxe edition of the DVD. I don't think it has the CD with it. I don't have the CD of this album, but it's got it's got a book, it's got stickers, it's got postcards, it's got a remastered version of the film in here, and this is a really great concert, and I definitely recommend picking this up if you can find it still. Okay, so then that's 2005, and then in 2006 there's word of another deluxe box set coming out for George, and what is it? It turns out to be an expanded version of Living in the Material World. This one includes a couple bonus tracks, Deep Blue and Miss Odell from the single, and there's a DVD here as well with some music videos and things like that. It's got a nice kind of package here. Just a lot of cool stuff and a nice booklet there and everything like that. But it's nice to have, but it's nothing really overly exciting, I guess. But still, it's a very good album, and it's nice to have it in the collection. So that was 2006. Now this is just going through a list that I've kind of pulled together here of some of the things that I have. I could be missing some things here and there, but I think I got kind of the major things here in my collection. So then in 2009, I don't actually have this CD. It's a single CD. It's basically a greatest hits compilation. It's called Let Me Roll It. It's got a lot of George's greatest hits on there, and a couple that haven't been on any other greatest hits compilations. I never actually did end up picking that up. I've seen it in the store all the time, but I just ended up not getting it. But that's just another one that came out, kind of came and went. You don't really hear too much about that anymore. And that was 2009. And also another thing that is somewhat George Harrison related from 2010 is his collaborations box set that came out. I think this was a 3 CD box set of music from Ravi Shankar, and that him and Ravi Shankar worked on together. George produced a lot of his stuff later in his career, and that's just another kind of side project that came out in 2010. And then in 2011, Martin Scorsese came out with this wonderful documentary about George Harrison living in the material world. I believe this appeared on HBO at first. I don't recall for sure. But I did end up getting this deluxe box set. You know, you got the nice fancy art prints here that you can display in the case. It came with the Blu-ray, the DVD. And the one thing that did come with this box set, and you can also buy that separately as well, it's still available out there on CD and vinyl, is an album called George Harrison Early Takes Volume 1. Now this is the kind of stuff that fans are really looking for. The early takes, it's got a lot of unreleased material, demos, alternate versions of songs, and there aren't really that many songs on the album either, which is really disappointing. And for, you know, it's been over 10 years now, almost 10 years, that came out, and people have been asking year after year, when are we going to get a volume 2 of this? Well, according to this article, maybe something like that is going to be coming out soon. We can only hope. So that's another thing that came out. And then, as I mentioned earlier, you know, we had in, let's see, what year was it? 2004, the Dark Horse box set came out. And it took an entire 10 years before we got the Apple Years box set. Now this is all of George's albums that were on the Apple Records label. This comes in this really cool box. The Apple Records logo on the front. And now these are all in the cardboard, you know, LP replica sleeves and things like that. We got Wonderwall and Electric Arguments in there for what that's worth to people. But just a lot of great material here, all been remastered once again. So we get All Things Must Pass and Living in the Material World that have been remastered for this box set. But it's just a really cool box set to have to gather all those Apple releases together in one place. Now, while that's cool to have those complete collections like that, it's really nothing new that we haven't heard before. It's like I said, it's really nice to have those together, but nothing new. And then in 2017, I heard word of another George Harrison release coming out. Now, you know, this is 3 years after the previous release. We're extending the years here. It's getting a long time between releases. And what did they decide to put out? Well, it's this back here, the George Harrison vinyl collection. It was quite an expensive box set, but it collected all of his studio albums, Apple and Dark Horse, on vinyl for the first time, all together in one place. Just very heavy duty, very thick, a lot of material in there. And it also included a picture disc of, I think it was When We Was Fab, and I can't remember the other side right now off the top of my head, I'm sorry, but it's just a really cool box set to have, but it's, again, it's nothing new that we haven't had before, and yeah. So then the following year, I heard rumblings of another George Harrison release coming out, and I was like, oh, please let it be something really cool. I really need to have something that we haven't heard before. But it ended up being the Concert for George. It's the concert that came out in 2003. After George's passing, everybody, all his friends, came together and put together a concert for George. And that was released on several different formats. We got the vinyl and CD here. Again, it's a really great collection of songs. But, you know, this came out on CD and everything, DVD and Blu-ray and all that, you know, shortly after it came out. And then they reissued it again now, you know, 15 years later. it's nice to have these updated versions and things like that, but it's still stuff that we've already seen before. So having said that, it's nice to hear news like this from Rolling Stone, from Danny and Olivia themselves, that say, you know, there's stuff out there that they're looking through. They got mountains of tapes and recordings that they're going through, and it sounds very promising that they're going to be putting something out there for us in the next years to come that we'll really enjoy. So stay tuned for all that, and I'm sure I'll be getting something when it comes out. So stay tuned to my channel, and I'll see you guys for the next news story. Take care.